Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you are scattered, and that the Lord will see you through this day. We continue on, Gospel of John, chapter 11, and as you know, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And as you might guess, raising Lazarus from the dead created quite the stir. Many people believed in Jesus. They saw what Jesus had done, how he brought Lazarus to life, and they finally believed. But others couldn't wait to get to Jerusalem to talk to the Pharisees there and tell them what Jesus did. It was a short journey from Bethany to Jerusalem, a couple miles, and so the word spread quickly throughout Jerusalem as to what Jesus had done. The Pharisees, when they heard, they were quite fearful. Rather than being excited or celebrating it, they were fearful. And they called a meeting with the Sanhedrin, that's the Jewish leading council, headquartered in Jerusalem, and expressed their fears. Their fear is this, that so many people would start going after Jesus, so many of the Jews would turn to Jesus, that it would create a movement, a disturbance. And in doing so, the Romans would catch wind of it, and they would come and they would turn against Jerusalem and turn against the Jewish people and rob the Sanhedrin of any freedom or authority that the Romans had permitted them to have, to maintain. And so they began to realize that, okay, we got to do something about Jesus and this movement, or the Romans are going to come against us, and whatever favors they have granted us, those favors will be revoked. Caiaphas was the high priest, and Caiaphas told the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees that they had it all wrong, that it would be better for one man to die than for the whole people to die. Now, his thinking is all we got to do is arrest Jesus. If we arrest Jesus, kind of the ringleader of this commotion, this movement, and we hand Jesus over to the Romans ourselves, then the Romans are going to see that we're actually for them and that we're actually cooperating with them. And so they'll actually strengthen their position with the Romans by this display of loyalty to the Romans in terms of handing this Jesus guy over to them, who's creating such a commotion and such a disturbance. So Caiaphas thinks he has this all worked out. We just need to arrest Jesus, and we'll have the Romans on our side. We'll be able to maintain our place, our favors, our order. In fact, we might even strengthen our position by doing such a thing. Now, John, reflecting on this after the death and resurrection of Jesus, realizes that Caiaphas was actually prophesying without knowing it, that it was a prophecy that if one man dies, the people will be saved. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened, that through the death of Jesus comes salvation, salvation for the many. The good shepherd lays down his life for the flock are saved. Many are brought to Jesus, many come to life through Jesus' death and resurrection. And so Caiaphas was actually right on target, but in a way far beyond what he ever realized, that through the death of one, many will be united, many will be saved. Now, here's kind of the thought for the day. Caiaphas was plotting against Jesus. And yet, in plotting against Jesus, he was actually kind of falling right into God's hands, right into God's plan to bring about salvation through Jesus. And God, in God's wisdom, was able to use even the plotting evil, plotting wickedness of Caiaphas to bring salvation. So, God can still do that. God's still at work doing that. That when people are plotting evil against his son, and I think we could extend that, then when people are plotting evil against God's children, God is able to take that very plotting and flip it around to bring about good, to bring about salvation, to bring about blessing. We see it in the story of Joseph. We see it most clearly in the story of Jesus. But just maybe somewhere in there, we can see it in our own stories. That every time somebody kind of stacks things against us, every time somebody might plot against us, every time it seems like things might not be working out at all, that God is actually able to take that and turn it for good, and turn it for blessing, and turn it for life. And not just life and blessing for us, but life and blessing for many. So don't be discouraged when things seem to be so stacked against you or like there's plotting going on. Don't be discouraged. Realize that, okay, this is not too big for God, and God might just be at work in this for salvation, for blessing, for life. God bless. Have a great day, and trust Him, even when it feels like things are stacked against you. Because God just might be flipping it for salvation.